First meeting of 2024, so it's good to see everybody. And now we got Stevie give us the roll call.
Good evening, everyone. Cindy Vaughn,
Here.
Lisa Werder-Brown,
Here.
Lloyd Cunningham, Dan DeMarco,
Here.
Patricia DeMarco, Tina Doucet,
Here.
Nick Grieshawk,
Here.
Mark Heckman, Kelly Kelly, Ken Lasada,
Here.
Ruthie Ann Omer,
Here.
Will Pickering,
Here.
Mary Ellen Ramage,
Here,
Tim Rogers,
Here.
Kathy Sapp, Danielle Ventresca, Sean Alfonso Wells,
Here.
Ten.
I have 11.
I have 11.
11 too.
Was Mark Heckman here?
No, you got Mary Ellen?
No.
I have 11, but in any case.
I have 11.
Yeah.
Not Mary Ellen? Yes. Oh, yes, okay.
So we have a four.
Online. We have one.
Yes. Hey.
So you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Max, who will be taking over the annual regional organization. Our solicitor, Max Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, according to the bylaws of the Board of Directors of ALCOSAN, the advisory committee shall elect from its members a chairperson and a vice chairperson. The election shall be for 1-year terms and held at the first meeting of the advisory committee after January 1st of each year. There is no self-imposed term limits, so people can run multiple times. Everybody conducts these a little bit differently, but I'll typically just ask for a motion to open the floor for nominations. We'll need that made and seconded. Once it passes, the floor will be open. Nominations do not require a second. If I only get one nominee, I will ask for a motion to close the floor for nominations and cast a unanimous ballot. If we have more than one nominee, Stevie will conduct a roll call vote. With that being said, I'll now call for a motion to open the floor for nominations for the position of chair.
Motion to open the floor for nomination.
Here by Mr. Rogers, is there a second?
Second.
Ruth Ann Omar, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. Okay, the floor is now open for nominations. Do I hear a
I'd like to
nomination?
nominate Mary Ellen Ramage.
I hear Mary Ellen Ramage. Are there any other
Second.
nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I have one nomination for Mary Ellen Ramage. I need a motion to close the floor for nominations and direct the secretary to cast a unanimous ballot in favor of Mary Ellen Ramage. Do I have that motion?
Motion.
Okay, Steve, you got it. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those please indicate by saying aye.
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 The opposed say nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next position, vice chair. Can I have a motion to open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair?
I'll make that motion.
Made by Mary Ellen Ramage. Is there a second?
Second.
Made by Ruth Ann Omar. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Hearing none, the floor is now open for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Lloyd Cunningham.
Lloyd Cunningham, do I have any other nominations for vice chair?
Motion to close nominations.
I have a motion
Second.
to close the nominations as well as a second and cast a unanimous ballot in favor of Lloyd Cunningham. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Cunningham. In absentia.
In absentia, yes. All right, moving on, we need to approve the minutes from our December 2023 meeting. So we have a motion to,
I need to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Perfect. I had some typos that I actually put in during the editing process. The meeting began at 2:30 PM or 5:30 PM. And it ended at 4:03, not 7:25 PM. So now it's hard.
Motion to accept the minutes is received with the amendments as stated.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, approved. Second item is our committee report to the ALCOSAN Board of Directors.
And I do not have it in the right condition for all of you, so I will work to get a draft to you next week. And we can move forward from that, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. Next we'll have.
Can I ask a question about
Oh,
that?
sure.
Is somebody gonna present it to the board?
Yeah.
The chair?
Yeah, sure. I'll say. After it's approved by the committee.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we're gonna have, our construction engineering department director, Kimberly Kennedy, give us a little update on the Ohio River Tunnel public meeting, which looked like it had a lot of people in attendance, which is wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, we had a public meeting held last night in the north side. I just have a few slides, sort of talks about the high level, location. This was, the intent of this meeting was to talk about the work associated with the Ohio River Tunnel in the city of Pittsburgh. So we've got, the Ohio River Tunnel only involves two communities. It involves McKees Rocks, and we had meetings in McKees Rocks last year. So this was the same, sort of intent, but this was for the city. So, going back, it was last night, it was at the Allegheny Center Alliance Church. It was a beautiful facility, and they were wonderful hosts for our staff and consultants. What we did was we tried to identify the stakeholders in certain zip codes where the work is going to be performed, and ultimately worked with the post office to have just over 6,000 mailers sent out for invitations. Ultimately, we got almost 40 public guests. So they were a very nice mix of people from community organizations, but also citizens. So it was a very nice mix of people. There was a really very nice engagement. These are the groups that we specifically reached out to personally invite, in addition to the postcards and in addition to posting it on our social media and on our website. So many of these organizations also took the invitation and posted it to their social media to sort of try to encourage attendance. And we had 8 stations. So we were able to provide a station for the overall clean water plan. But then we drilled down and really just talked about the Ohio River Tunnel, which is obviously the one bidding first, and bidding this year. And then we had individual boards for each one of the near surface facilities that really generated some great conversation. There was a plan and a profile on each of the boards to really be specific about where the work is happening, the limits of construction, what to expect. And then we worked with our final design consultant for station number 4 to talk about traffic patterns and other impacts. A lot of this, majority of this work is 150 feet below grade with absolutely no disruption. But there are disruptions. There are places where we have to build drop shafts and connect those drop shafts to the tunnel system. So we talked about that and fielded a lot of questions. Very good questions, thoughtful questions. Then Then we always love our geotechnical borings. People love them. So we took some borings and we got some great traffic at the site investigation booth. And then there was an opportunity for just talking about jobs across the board with ALCOSAN through construction for small businesses. So we fielded a variety of questions about the impact of a project of this size and how it relates to jobs and opportunities. We also had River Life, and we invited them, and they accepted to have a station to talk about their work on either side of the West End Bridge, because we also have a near surface facility on either side of the West End Bridge, and we've been working pretty carefully together to make sure that those are done to the extent possible together and not and really sharing resources. And then we asked when people left if they had any comments. And we actually got 16 comment cards last night, which is pretty good considering there's like 40 people. And then there are 2 other ways. So there was also a QR code. And during the presentation phase, it's like, you don't have to just have a question tonight. If you have a question, there are other ways that you can always submit questions to us. So there's not only the QR code that'll stay open, but then there was an email address provided, like, I think it's ort@ort.org, but it's a way to kind of, it comes to a bunch of us, and then whoever, the most appropriate is to answer, we get an answer out there. So we're pretty happy with the meeting, the engagement, and I will say that the most common question was about the trails, and we expected that. So we tailored some of the slides and the presentation to talk about the trails and the detours. They were absolutely appropriate questions, and we'll continue to inform people. There's only 3 sites that have some pretty minor trail impacts, but nonetheless, I mean, a trail impact's a trail impact, and we have to make sure that we communicate it effectively. So I think last night was the start of, many more conversations, especially as we move into construction.
Very good, thank you. Anybody have any questions of Cam?
I do.
Darla?
Should have gone, so I'm sorry that I missed it. So Kim, River Life's project is about ramps on both sides of the West End Bridge, right? Did they give an the county funded those projects. Did they give an indication of PennDOT's responsiveness to actually building those ramps? And do you think that will there be synergy?
So their work is going to happen after the tunnel's done.
Okay,
What we're trying to do, they
After-
talked about PennDOT.
a long
Right.
time ago, like their work will be done after the tunnel.
Like, they won't start construction until, I believe, 2030.
Okay,
Because PennDOT has to get it funded, then it has to be designed. There's a lot of work, but what we want to do is make sure that we've thought about it enough that when they are funded and ready to go, that our shafts and the utility relocations and the access for ALCOSAN vehicles to get in there was done now in a way that when they're funded and ready to go, it doesn't look like, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So even though our project will be done by the time they do their project, it's important dialogue now to make sure it's done in a way that doesn't hinder what their vision is.
and then one more
Excuse me
question.
1 second. Can people online hear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One more
Yes.
question. We had talked about this many years ago about providing bathroom facilities along the system. As you were looking at this, has that come up again, or is there a discussion? Because there was a trade-off between also providing, kind of facilities for ALCOSAN workers, but then also having availability of facilities for trail users.
So that has not come up recently. Of the sites, there's only 2 that will have a building.
Mhm.
The rest of them will be completely restored to green space or with access for personnel to observe the structures after each rain event. But no, that hasn't come up.
Is that possible? I mean, is that,
Um,
I know it pushes the limits a little bit
Mhm.
more, but part of what we had talked about, and again, I'm going back several years, is being able to provide that amenity as kind of the leave behind, for lack of a better way of thinking about it. So I don't know if any of the buildings also can accommodate that. Because when we talked about it before, we talked about it from the perspective of, this would be great for ALCOSAN too, right? Because you've got people on those systems on a regular basis. So just as something to tuck in as you're really getting down to the design.
It's an important reminder. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Kim.
Yeah, just sorry, a little late on the draw here. This is Will. Curious if there were any particular questions that you felt were the most challenging or contentious, or were they just sort of informational on the details of the project?
I would say that there weren't any contentious questions. There were just really, I thought, pretty thoughtful questions. The one that I got was about the fill, what we're taking out of the ground and how we're going to dispose of it. So we kind of talked through that and the unknown of that and the responsibility of the contractor in that particular instance. But no, it was otherwise, once we really were able to show the details of the work, especially associated with the trails, I thought we got pretty positive responses for where we're at and the limited impacts to the trails and then the detours associated with it. I thought people were pretty happy generally.
Great, thanks, Kim.
Okay, next up, we have the review of the rate setting from our finance director, Karen Pantoni.
Oops, we got
Oh, I skipped on, I'm sorry, Julia. I'm so sorry. That's all right.
Congratulations, getting through that. Meeting. Thank you, Ralph, and then
Right.
that's the wrong one. Yeah, I didn't think that was the right one. I need to. I was happy.
Good. It's very good.
You guys, we didn't the right way. Sorry, we've been having computer glitches. Getting ready for this. You're gonna come out at Buncher? Is that where you're gonna?
We're gonna put in it bunch.
You're putting it in the phone.
When you come out.
You're gonna come out here. Has the Borhola come up again? Good. Oh, good.
I'm not even sure if it's
The conversation, good.
We're working on it, everybody. Hang in there.
Over there.
Yeah.
That's the theme of regionalization. All good things take time.
That's perfect, Julia.
Yes. Thank you, Derek.
Engineers can have a sense of humor, Doug. It's important.
It's possible.
It's important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Positivity.
And can I go there?
I think you.
Speakers a little bit away from you.
No, there's the one right here.
Okay. There you go. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time. To the committee, we wanted to give you a brief update on where the region is through the transfer program or regionalization program. We are continuing to be thrilled with the progress we're making together with our municipalities. We have a little over 18 miles transferred, and we have about another 42 in the queue which is those municipalities where the entire point of connection, all those municipalities together have agreed to the program, indicated their intent to transfer through passing a resolution, and have completed their repairs. We have 5 applications currently in with DEP, and they've been a tremendous partner through all of this as we dig up some of these records from 1920 and Mary Ellen that was saved from Hurricane Ivan. So we filter through those and try to make sense of them into today's requirements. So we have 5 of those into DEP. We're looking forward to having about another 20 miles go in very shortly. It's our goal as a region to get to 50 miles completely transferred by the end of the year. And we've made some progress with the facilities as well. So I'll talk to you about that a little bit. Here's what the region looks like. You'll see that in the center, PWSA is continuing to engage with us and communicate with us about the program. They have a few extra hurdles, so it's going to just take them a little bit longer. But we're seeing some development throughout and advancement throughout the service area, which is really encouraging. The 18 miles that have transferred are primarily in Turtle Creek. So you'll hear TD09, T29A, and then we have some in the South Hills as well. C5411 and Etna is also one of the Etna, Shaler, Ross. They have been collaborating over about the course of a year to get us to the point we're right at the finish line of transfer. Once these lines become the property and the responsibility of ALCOSAN, we immediately start to roll them into our existing O&M standards. We want to take good care of the infrastructure. We're doing that in a couple different ways. For A78, that line that came over from Aspinwall, we have a project engaged with the Army Corps of Engineers where we were able to obtain grant funding to get the Delafield stream removed from that combined sewer. And that project is currently in design, about 60% design right now. For T29A10, which was over there in Turtle Creek, formerly owned by Monroeville, we've inspected that line recently under a contract. We've identified some immediate repairs that were needed, things like cleaning or removing some root balls, and that has already been addressed. And then through these municipal COAs, that's a priority effort for our customers. And we're engaging in those collaborative efforts with a lot of support from Three Rivers Wet Weather. Same for TO9. We want to get an assessment of where these sewers are at now and start planning for the future improvements that are needed. Another issue that came up was one of the lines that came over also has an inverted siphon that's just an engineer's fancy way of saying the water dips down when the plant comes up. Those have to be inspected and cleaned at a much higher frequency than some of the other sewers. So we've completed that work as well.
Why did they build something like that?
To get water from one side of a stream to the other. Those are always used to cross a water.
We have one on, when they built the flood project.
Yeah.
An inverted siphon.
Inverted siphon. Looks like an upside down trapezoid.
And it does have, they do need cleaned out a lot. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
But was certainly something that municipality was eager to transfer to ALCOSAN.
I bet.
No, I'm stuck there.
There's nothing you can do about it.
So the facility we've been working on with a handful of municipalities, so North Fayette, South Fayette, Oakdale, McDonald, all of those municipalities jointly own about a 10-mile long, 9.5-mile long trunk sewer. That along that sewer is a pump station, and that's the Oakdale pump station. So it too is eligible for transfer. And through the course of, again, about a year, we've negotiated improvements to that station that are such that it doesn't make sense to modify the facility that's there. We will need to build a new pump station. Because those communities are experiencing growth in our service area, they wanted to negotiate that the line coming into that station would also be increased to address that capacity. So we've negotiated a cost share, the little over 9 million that we've split between the municipalities and ALCOSAN to move that work forward. That's the brief update. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a team. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, and our system is pretty complicated. is how it's been called, and I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into. Julia's been awesome. She's come out so many times. And we're all so happy that we are so close to the finish line, so grateful for that. Thank you. Okay, next up, and I apologize, is Karen, our Director of Finance, Karen Fantoni. Oh, and I also I understand that Darren Kelly is here from the board. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Thank you for having.
Thank you.
Didn't listen.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
Right, how do I put this? Is this working? Are you working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm technology challenged. I admit it full heart, like technology hates me. And it always gets me. It's terrible. It's terrible. Our numbers are good. Officially bad. So. No, we're good. We're good. Thanks.
Get her some crystals or something.
I do, and I have crystals. I have my salt stone. I do, I try to do, I do at night. I do.
Okay.
It just checking. Yeah, it just.
I'll send you something over.
I love that. Thank you.
So needed, whatever it is.
Right, so we're gonna focus. We're gonna talk about rates. We're gonna talk specifically about how ALCOSAN sets our rates and how, how we do the process, how often we do the process, what is all involved in the process. So I thought a good quote to start off this discussion would be this one I found here on the board, and I absolutely love this quote. And it says, can we afford clean water? Right? That's what we're talking about. Can we afford clean water? Can we afford rivers and lakes and streams and oceans which continue to make possible life on this planet? Can we afford life itself? These questions were never asked as we destroyed the waters of our nation, and they deserve no answers as we finally move to restore and renew them. These questions answer themselves. You know what I like about this quote? This quote was made by a gentleman who was a US Senator. He was a governor in Maine, and he died 30 years ago. Think about that. He died 30 years ago, and this quote is as relevant, if not more relevant today than it was when he said it. So, I just think about that as we go through this presentation. Okay, so what are rates? And how are rates and why are they important? So our rates are important because our rates develop our revenue, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the formula that we use, but rates develop revenue. The revenue that we receive facilitates the accomplishment of our mission, right? And if we accomplish that mission, then we are going to achieve compliance with anything that we have to do from a regulatory and from a customer perspective. We're going to satisfy those customer expectations. We're going to satisfy the regulatory dictates that we're under by meeting those missions. All right, so what is rate? So we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of the bill. This is not a billing presentation. We're not going to delve into billing right now, but just some general concepts of billing, right? Because that's how we generate that revenue. We bill and then we get revenue, we get paid, hopefully, right? So what is in the bill? Well, ALCOSAN, we bill quarterly, right? We have 83 municipalities. So we bill our municipal customers quarterly. The rate that we're talking about, time consumption equals the commodity charge. So there's two components to what we get paid. We get the commodity charge, and then we get our quarterly service charge, and that equals the billed amount. So the quarterly service charge is a fixed amount, and it's the same for every account that's out there. Everybody pays the same quarterly service charge. And if this is a typical thing, you see it in the utility industry, and it's to help us recover those fixed charges, right? Some of the costs that we incur here at ALCOSAN are variable. Some of them are fixed. And that quarterly service charge is a fixed cost for everyone's account. So if you don't use any water, but you still are hooked up to the sewer system, you're going to pay a quarterly service charge. And that is just because you have you're hooked up to the system, and that's going to help defray some of those fixed costs. So the consumption, where does the consumption come from? So we receive water data from 22 different water agencies. So the consumption data comes directly to us from the water agencies. So that's important to remember as we get a little later into the presentation. Okay, so where's the rate history? Where have we been? Okay, so this goes back to 2006, goes through to 2026. So these are the rates that we have either have in place in the future through rate resolution or we have charged in the past. So back in 2014 was the first year that we started a multi-year rate resolution. That was the first year we went out, it was a 4-year resolution, and then it was 17% and then 11, 11, 11. That was very successful. So we did it again in 2018, and we did another 4-year rate resolution with 7.5% and then 7 for the next following 3 years after that. And again, it was something that was very well received by our municipal customers. And so we did a 5-year rate resolution back in 2022. So this year we are in the 3rd year of that 5-year rate resolution, and it's 7% for the next 5 years. This will conclude in 2026. So where are we from a current rate perspective? Okay, so right now, our service charge, right, that quarterly service charge per bill is $23.41. So every account is charged $23.41 a quarter. The commodity charge, which is based on a T-gallon, 1,000 gallons of usage, comes out to $11.14. That's based on your usage. It's based on the water data that we receive from those 22 different water agencies. Okay, that's variable. So when we look at this, we say on average, we assume that the average household uses about 12 T-gallons a quarter. So on an average basis, the average household for 2024 is going to pay $628.36 for the year for ALCOSAN charges, which is up $41 over what they paid last year. Or to break it down on a monthly basis, we're talking $3.43 more a month than what they would have paid in 2023. This slide, I will have to tell you, was the last slide added to the slide deck. It was a slide that was suggested by our esteemed executive director. And I will tell you this much, I think it's my favorite slide. I love this slide.
Bonus for care.
Awesome. Great job. Okay, so this slide here tells an amazing story. So when we look at rates, we have a rate model. This rate model was developed in conjunction with our consultant firm, CDM Smith. CDM Smith and ALCOSAN worked together to develop this rate model back in the 90s. Was that CDM or Black and Beach? CDM Smith. That's pretty spot on. There you go. There, she picked up on it right away. Thank you, Darla. Isn't it a great slide? It's a great slide. Bonus for Darla. So what this is telling you is back in 1999, when we looked at that rate model and we forecasted what we thought rates would be in 2024, we're saying in 2024, we expect, based on everything we needed to do, all those milestones we needed to meet, all those expenditures we had to achieve, all the debt we had to issue, all of that, and we're going to talk about what those variables look like. We said rates are going to be $651 per year. Okay, where are they now? $626 a year. Think about that. 2013, we're talking 14 years after we ran the model originally, we said they're going to be $659 a year. 14 years after we originally ran that model, we said, okay, right, we were wrong. They're going to be $8 more a year. $8 more a year. So now in 2024, what the average household is gonna pay is $25 less. Or less than 4%, we were less than 4% off of what that original estimate was back in 1999. This is a great story. What this tells you is that model works. The assumptions in that model work. We understand how that model works. CDM Smith understands how that model works. And we can make that work. And this is a great, great story. Okay, so when we get back to how we set rates, what are the objectives? When we look at setting rates, what are we trying to accomplish by setting rates, right? So when we did the 2022-2026 multi-year resolution, we were planning on, we started this process actually in the second quarter of 2021, right? So you have to set this process well in advance, because when we start talking about all the assumptions that go into that model, you know, and you're gonna see all those moving pieces, you know, it takes a long time to work through all that information. So this was actually completed in October of 2021. We would go then to the board, and we'll talk about that process in a little bit, but this work takes time. Okay, so what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do? We are trying to maintain strong debt service coverage ratios to preserve our bond ratings in the municipal debt market. Why is that important? Right? Because we have to have strong bond ratings, because we're going to be spending a lot of money, right? You just heard about money we're spending. Kim just talked about it. Julia just talked about it, right? We're going to be spending a lot of money. So that money is, a lot of that is going to be bond funded. So the stronger our ratios are, the less we're going to have to spend on interest. We want to implement predictable and stable rate increases to allow our customer municipalities to plan and to avoid user rate shock. Again, I talked about the first time we implemented the multi-year rate resolutions, right? And why that's successful, because we have gone out and we've told those municipalities what those rates are going to look like for a period of time. They're not sitting there in September or October working on their budgets with this big unknown as to what they're going to have to budget for those ALCOSAN charges. We've told them ahead of time what those rates are going to look like. Reducing long-term borrowing requirements where possible. Okay, so we're going to cash fund some of that clean water program. The more we can cash fund that clean water program, the less we have to borrow. It's cheaper for us, it's cheaper for our municipalities, it's cheaper for their customers if we can cash fund as much of that as we possibly can. And then we wanted to try to keep that first phase, which is going to conclude hopefully here in 2036, to be as affordable as possible, right? So we always have our eye on that prize at the end, right? What's the ratepayer going to be paying at 2036? That rate model that we developed back in the 90s goes out to 2036. And we want to make sure that we're trying to keep that ratepayer in mind every step of the way and make sure that they're paying the least that they have to pay in order for us to clean those waters. All right, so rate setting. What do we know? All right, we have knowns and we have unknowns. What do we know? We have legal commitments, right? There are things that ALCOSAN is legally obligated to do. We are legally required to pay for certain things we've agreed to do, right? What's the biggest one? The biggest one is the clean water program, right? The clean water plan. We've made that commitment. Those documents are signed. They are filed. We are obligated. That money has been spent. We just haven't written the checks yet. We have to fund that program. It is very expensive. Okay, we have legal commitments. We are required by our trust indenture to pay our debt service and to fund capital to the extent that we can. Right, that rate model that I've been talking about has a component in there that we know. We estimate what kind of debt we're going to be issuing, when we're going to be issuing it, what we think those rates are going to be, and how much of that is going to come from our cash. All right, what happens if we don't? There's penalties, interest, or even jail time. So if we don't hit those commitments that we've committed to, someone's going to get in trouble. All right, what are some other legal commitments that we have, right? We have employees, we have commitments to our employees, right? We've made promises to the employees. We're obligated to keep those promises to our employees. We have union contracts, right? Our union contracts go out for a period of time. We've promised them benefits. We've promised retirement plans, funding of those retirement plans. We're legally obligated to fund those retirement plans that we have promised those employees. Okay, other post-retirement benefits, we're legally obligated to pay for those things that our employees have earned. Debt service, right? The trust indenture is another legally binding contract, right? We have rate covenants that we have to achieve as we go through the process of looking and paying that debt service. Okay, there's cash reserves that we have to keep on hand that are specified for us by that trust indenture. Okay, so what other kind of commitments do we have that we have to fund? Right? The Clean Water Assistance Fund, right? We made promises to those people in our service area that are less fortunate, those people that might need a little help. We've made promises to them, we have to fund them, right? We can't offer a grant program and not pay them. Talk about grant programs, a grow grant program, right? We've made commitments to our municipal customers to fund certain obligations under that program. Cash funded capital, we're getting back to that again. It's an important one. Operating contracts, right? During the operation of ALCOSAN, we have commitments that we've made to our contractors. We've had commitments that we've made for different folks. This example here was Three Rivers Wet Weather, right? And then also the operation and maintenance of the plant in the regional system. Why is that a commitment? Well, it's a commitment because we issue revenue bonds, right? So not only have we committed to doing this through our municipal agreements, we've committed to doing it to our bondholders. If we don't maintain and operate the plant sufficiently, we can't derive revenue. We can't make those other obligations. We can't pay for the things that we need to pay for. And what's going to happen to the operation and maintenance of the plant in the regional system as we do regionalized assets, as Julia just talked about? So all those additional regionalized assets come on, there's going to be additional commitments that we're going to have to fund the operation and maintenance of those. Okay, so what are some of the unknowns? So we talked about the knowns, those are known commitments, right? But there's a lot of unknowns. Things that you have to kind of like look into that crystal ball and try to figure out what we think is going to happen, right? So number of employees, we talked about some of the knowns that we have for the employees and the promises we've made for things that they've earned. Well, what's happened since 2000 as our employee staff has blossomed, right? They continue to grow and it's going to continue to grow. So there's salaries there, there's benefits there. We have to plan for retirement. So when we're looking at setting rates, we got to say, okay, well, how many employees do you think we're going to have? Who do you think is going to retire? What are we going to do to replace those folks? There's a whole host of assumptions that have to be made about our workforce. This is a big one down here, build consumption. What has happened since the early 2000s for build consumption, right? This is again the water data. So this is the usage of people using water in our service area, right? In 2002, our build consumption was 31 billion gallons. Last year, it was 19. Why is that?
Low flow toilet.
Low flow, you nailed it. You're spot on today, Darla. You are spot on. You are spot on. Water efficient appliances, right? And also as rates go up, people use less water, right? People are not washing their cars in their driveway. People are not topping off their pools. They're not watering their yards. They're not putting in sprinkler systems, right? Because they're not using that water if they don't need to. I wish my children would know that. I have a 17-year-old and I swear he takes 3 showers a day and I am not exaggerating. So this is not on me. But we have seen a steady decline. Now, between 20, the early 2000s and 2010, it was a pretty significant decline. And we lost some industrial customers in the area, and that also led to that decline. But we still see every year a small decline in consumption.
I have a question about that,
Yeah.
because even if consumption went up, the rates can't fall based on the amount of money you have to raise for the program, correct?
That is correct.
And then also, you also have to tangle with the fact that any new faucets or showers or anything you purchase have low flow regulators on them. So there's another regulatory side to that particular thing. So even if we went out and said, use as much water as you can, the rates aren't going to change based on what you need to do. Okay.
But what this is saying, though,
I'll use more water, but my
oh,
water.
please do.
PWO.
I told you, I have I have this whole, we can work with Will, we can work with PwC. I have this whole thing. I want to give bidets to everybody.
I love bidets.
Yeah, why not? So, but okay, back on track, we'll wheel it back in a little bit here. Okay, gallons treated. This is another number that's really interesting. Okay, so in 2010, we treated 68 billion gallons, 2023, 64, some fluctuation in there. What is interesting about this is what we treat has no bearing on, or very little bearing on what we bill. Okay, so what we actually bill is based on that water data that we receive from the 22 water agencies. Okay, so we're billing about 30% of what we actually treat. What we treat is what's driving the costs, right? Because we have to treat that. We have to use the chemicals to treat that. We have to have the manpower to treat that. But we can't bill for all of that. And why is what we treat so much higher is because we're treating other water that comes in through the pipe that doesn't come from down the drain, right? So it's not things that you're using in the shower or you're using in the washing machine, or washing down the toilet. It's water that's coming in through I&I. It's water that's coming in through the streams that we're trying to daylight and things of that nature. So we have a lot more water coming to the plant. And obviously, this is also driven what we treat based on whether it's a wet year or a dry year. Last year was a dry year. Okay, but this year, who knows what we're gonna have. All right, so what else is the unknown? Okay, then this is really where I wish I could have a crystal ball. Okay, so we start talking about the economic environment with rates of inflation. So when we look at inflation, we do look back and we're trying to figure out what we estimate, what we think inflation is gonna be for that period of time that we're setting rates. And I'll tell you right now, I missed the boat. I assumed that inflation was going to be about 3.5% going forward for, 2022 through 2028. Well, guess what inflation was in 2022? It was 8%. It was a lot higher than what we had estimated it to be. Because who would have expected it to go up to 8% in a very short period of time? The other side of that is interest rates. In 2020, look how low the interest rates were anemic, right? Completely anemic. It was less than 0.5%. And then in 2023, in a very short period of time, we're paying over 5%. So when you're in the bond market as frequently as ALCOSAN's in the bond market, that type of fluctuation is critical and it's hard to plan for. So the other unknowns is insurance, right? We have to have insurance on the facilities and on our vehicles and on our people and, on the interceptor system. And so here's just a laundry list of different types of insurances that we have. But what's happening in the insurance industry, right? It might not be affecting us here in Pittsburgh. I mean, last time I checked, we haven't had many tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes or wildfires. But when the same people that insure us have to insure them, our rates go up. And I try to explain to them that we live in Pittsburgh and we don't have a lot of, problems like that. But we still have to help cover their losses. Okay, some other unknowns. Timing and amount of capital expenditures, and this one can get kind of fun. So we have to figure out, and remember, we're forecasting for 5 years when we set that 5-year rate resolution, how much money we think we're gonna spend on the capital side, right? And when we think we're gonna have it. So we're looking at the supply of money. When do we have to go out into the bond market and receive those capital funds versus when we think we're gonna spend that money? Because you can't go, you can't go too soon because you have a limited amount of time to spend those funds down, right? Because we're issuing tax exempt debt. So you can't just sit on that money forever, and especially when the interest rates were anemic, who wanted to do that? You know, so you only have a certain amount of time that you can spend that money down. So you have to really plan ahead as to what that timing needs to look like. So again, when we look here, are the timing and amount of the capital expenditures, it's impacted by project status. It could be impacted by unforeseen circumstances, like who thought of COVID and all the supply chain issues that we experienced with COVID, right? That threw a monkey wrench into certain of our activities here in the capital side and the operating side, right? So it changed the dynamic of when we were going to be spending some of that capital funds. But if you look at our average spend on the capital, back in 2011, we were spending a little over $3 million a month. Now in 2023, we're spending $14.5 million a month. So you can see how that spend has really ratcheted up. And when these tunnels start to be under construction, that number is going to skyrocket. So we have to time the debt so we have the funds available to pay those capital expenditures. All right, so we talk a lot about all those moving pieces that go into the model, right? But at the end of the day, when we're looking at setting the rates, it's math, right? We know what we have to spend. We know where all that money is going to go, but we have to back into what that rate needs to be times where we think the consumption is going to end up to come up with enough money to pay for all those obligations that we have to incur, right? Obligations and revenue, they must balance. So this was the last rate resolution that was adopted. It was from 2022 to 2026, and it was flat 7%. So one of the things I really want you to take away is it wasn't that we just said, hey, you know what, 7% worked really well last year, let's just keep it going. We didn't do that. We didn't do this in a vacuum. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of assumptions that go into this rate model. So we get the rate resolution, and it was, you know, so when we look at this rate model, you know, we look at a lot of different rate scenarios. We didn't just pick one. We looked at, I bet you I looked at 20 different rate scenarios that had all kinds of different things. What if rates did this? Or what if we didn't raise rates for a year? We didn't raise rates for 2 years. What would that look like at the end of 2036? You know, so what could we do that would map up the spending of the capital and the spending and the drawdowns on the debt and still achieve the lowest possible cost to those ratepayers at the end of this plan in 2036? And that's what we made our decision on, to go to the board and make the recommendation for that rate resolution to the board. Our rates are approved by the board of directors. So we take those to the board of directors will then vote and ratify those rates. And then we are required under the Z agreements to make a 60-day notice to all the municipalities prior to any sort of rate increase. So we do that at the time of the resolution, and then we do that every year. So every year, even though we've told them in advance that we're going to be raising rates every year on the, you know, January 1, we still send them a letter 60 days in advance of that increase so that they are reminded. All right, so what are the opportunity costs? What if we don't do what we need to do in order to accomplish what we have to do. What if we don't do what we need to do to accomplish ALCOSAN's mission? Well, we're not gonna be able to do regionalization. Sorry, Julia. There's no way, if we don't raise rates, we're not gonna be able to accomplish that. We're not gonna be able to assume the ownership of those stations, pump stations and all those lines. Our long-term borrowing requirements are gonna increase, right? We won't have the cash to do any of that cash funding. We're gonna have to increase our borrowings even above and beyond where we think that they're gonna be. So what does that mean? It means more costs, right? Because now we're borrowing more money, more interest rates, more costs and interest expense, more cost paying underwriters, all that good stuff. So our excellent and stable bond ratings could be weakened, right? Because the rating agencies love our multi-year rate resolutions. They love knowing that we're not going back every year and trying to figure out where rates need to be. And it would be impossible to implement the Clean Water Plan without exceeding that 2% affordability that the EPA has recommended based on median household income. We wouldn't be able to do it. So what have we done? What have we done to help those? We know rates are going to go up. Rates have to go up. We don't have a choice. But what we've done is we implemented Clean Water Assistance Fund. We started this back in 2017 to help those that need some help paying that ALCOSAN charge. We increased it this year to $45 a quarter, up from $42 last year. This is a direct credit on the bills for those people that qualify. They qualify, and it's administered through the Dollar Energy Fund. And eligible customers, you know, can take advantage of this, and we wish more people would take advantage of this. And that is all I have to say. So, any questions are related to rates?
Yes, I have 3 questions if I could. Is there a difference in the charge between residential and commercial for the quarterly service fee?
I can't hear you.
Is there a difference in rates and the structure?
Not as it relates to water usage.
No, I mean to ALCOSAN. Your billing.
So then, as it relates to the billing that's done through, based on your water usage, it's the same rates and it's the same, you have the same commodity charge and the same service charge.
That's what I was asking, service charge, the basic service charge. So a building like US Steel pays the same as my house for a quarterly service charge?
Per account. So
Yes.
a building like US Steel is gonna have more than one water account.
Okay.
It's based on their water account.
Okay.
I mean, there are industrial charges that go through the industrial waste area. I'm talking billing related to actually what's coming through based on your water chart.
Okay. I assume you're not eligible for any state aid for the pension plan?
No.
Okay. And lastly, how do you factor in grants and aid from federal and state governments?
Right now, as we have discussed in the past, we are almost 100% funded by our users. Jean is actively pursuing grants right now, but we have not received grants as far as related to our users and the rates. So we don't take that into consideration at all because we haven't received anything.
Do we still retain an advisor for pursuing grants?
You have to talk to Jean.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I raise it because, as I mentioned before, the federal government gave Mexico a couple $100 million to fix a sanitary sewer authority, and I'm a little surprised that our representatives can't pony up with a couple million.
Any questions about rates?
Hey, Julia, this is Ruth Ann Omer. I just want to let you know that I really think this was a very comprehensive presentation and you did a really nice job. I think you've kept it really, I I don't want to say basic, but it can just be used anywhere to explain where things, if people will let you finish, if they're not mad. But I just want to tell you, I've done this a long time, and I really think you did a nice job. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. All right.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, this is Will from Pittsburgh/PWSA. Curious if you all have engaged with Penvest. They have been a little stingy for us in terms of grants, with the exception of funding lead service line replacements, but we have been able to leverage them for low interest borrowing where the interest rate is much lower than what we would alternatively get on the municipal bond market.
We had used Penvest many years ago, but we have not engaged with them recently.
The rates are really low right now, like really low.
We just got a 1% loan for about $18 million, and it varies kind of depending on their math, but I would encourage you to, this is potentially at the expense of our ability to leverage them, but what we have heard from them is they have plenty of capacity,
Lots of money. That's
and especially on the loan side of things. So
I think it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, definitely. So, Will, this is Letta. Our Penvest experience speaks to what you just said there at the end, hindering your ability to receive funding. Because of the size of our request historically, we have been encouraged to support municipal requests for funding with the very direct advice that if you get the type of funding you need, there's not going to be much left for everybody else. So if that has changed and somebody's saying, welcome, put your hand in the pot, we will. I just don't want to put my hand anywhere it's going to get smacked again.
Thank you, Arletta.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that, and I will do my best to test the waters and share any intel I can glean from our conversations with them if they have more capacity now.
All right, thank you.
The other follow-up question I had is, I know the rate schedule is through 2026, but obviously a lot of the construction costs for the tunnels are coming in later years. Do you have a sense through your model or anything, obviously unofficial, that you could share? Do you see the 7% being stable here on out, or is there going to have to be a jump in the rate of increases to fund the, as construction speeds up?
Well, unfortunately, my crystal ball is really cloudy right now, and like I said, I missed a boat with inflation when we did that. We assumed the risk of that when we do a multi-year rate increase, because clearly the costs were higher than what we had anticipated them being when we ran the model back in 2021. We do update the model frequently. Every time we go out for bonds, we'll be looking at what the assumptions are at that time. So we'll have a better idea when we go out for our next bond issue.
How often do you run the model, did you say? I'm sorry.
We run the model every time we go out for bonds.
Okay.
We update it, we updated the assumptions. We look at all that every time we go out for debt.
Thank you.
Hey, Gene, this is Dan DeMarco. Gene, can you get me can I get that PowerPoint, the presentation? Is that confidential, or?
We generally do not share PowerPoints, which is pretty common in major organizations, only because people can change them, etc. And really, PowerPoint is just an aid to the presentation. It's not the presentation itself, but we're happy to come and talk to anybody.
Okay. I'd like to share. I wanted to share this information with my board, but okay, I'll talk to you about it.
And I do understand, like, I read somewhere where it said the first rate increase was received favorably. And I'm gonna tell you, as a municipal manager, they're never favorably received by any resident. I mean, and I don't mean that just with ALCOSAN, that's across the board, garbage, water, sewage. You know, so, you know, I see what Dan's saying, there was some pretty in-depth and valuable information here that people, would be helpful to have our elected officials have a deeper understanding. Your presentation was excellent. You know, and, you know, we have a responsibility, I think, at least being on this advisory board, to take that information that we just learned and make sure that we are helping our other elected officials to understand.
Mhm.
Understood, agreed. When she said what she said, I went, oh, I don't think I would have used those words that way. What she intended
Yeah.
to say, this is taking nothing away from what she did because it was fantastic. What she intended to convey was that the multi-year rate increase was received more favorably than every year. A single, let's wait, what's it gonna be? A single, that's what was received favorably by municipal officials and by commercial customers. We know we can project that piece. Secondly, the PowerPoint, yes, a static presentation without care, explaining everything she stood here and explained. And again, I'm not suggesting you don't have the capability. All of you are professionals. You're not going to do what Karen did. We can produce a document that adds narrative to key slides. There's some key information that you're interested in sharing, not the whole thing, and you want it done a certain way. We can do that.
That would be great. I mean, I was taking all kinds of notes, you know, because including right from the beginning, even your quote that you used to open it was really, yeah.
Well, he was on the environmental committee.
Yeah.
The Senate, right? So
Yeah.
he was around when they passed the Clean Water Act.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of buy-in to it because he was a senator at that point.
He's the governor and senator and secretary and
Secretary of State, yeah.
under Jimmy Carter.
These meetings are recorded and broadcast available on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, there you
Well,
go.
that's a great point.
To take that presentation and try to explain it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max.
Well, again, I appreciate the length of time that we put into this. I really do appreciate the length of time. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You did a nice job of explaining all of that. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, yeah. Next we have our working groups discussion. I think, did everyone or just me get the attendance sheets of the different? That's helpful because I'm technologically challenged too, so, and I wasn't gonna take these all together. You look at this information. But, you know, we talked about this last time, and maybe, you know, if you go over these numbers, there were some subject matters that got more people than others, some that 2 people came to for the whole, you know, so I think we do really need to evaluate it. I find it interesting, especially because some of these topics people were so very passionate about. And yet the attendance was somewhat low. So, you know, that could be for a myriad of reasons, the time, the day, the change in the subject matter, what was happening in the world at that time. So I think it would be good to, if we talked again, you know, the regionalization, I think we had 1 person come. You know, so that's a big subject matter for this organization. So I'd like to know how everybody else feels about that. The committee meetings, as I said, there were some very passionate
Working groups.
working groups, I'm sorry. I probably confused everyone there. But, the working group meetings, I think, maybe we scale down the subject matters, or change the subject matters. I'd like to see what everybody else's thoughts are on that.
Did the same people come, or did you see a variety of people coming, Phil?
It was a little bit the same people, I would say, and doing what I do for a living. Based on the times in that, I try to, and that's just, it's like, okay, I'm not a person that's retired or this or that, so it's really difficult for me to attend those times. And so I kind of looked at it that way too. So, I think we need to reevaluate those committee meetings and perhaps the subject matters. I don't know, for those who have gone, I mean, I myself, I think I went to 2 or 3. And that's it. I found them wonderful. The presentations of the information by the staff, as usual, was above par, excellent. They really were given an update. It was really a benefit to anybody who was on them. So do we have any input from maybe people who did attend? What their thoughts were? Maybe we could send a poll out to everybody, do, some kind of poll that you could tell us what your subject matters were, why you may or may not have attended, it had to do with the time of the day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Regionalization, like I said, we had one person attend, it's a big thing, but, those are things that are inside the community with the technical people, the engineers, so that might be really important on this end, but for us, that might not be such a, because we're all down that road. Each community knows what they're gonna have to do and what they need to do, and so what do you think about sending a poll out?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, yes,
From Stevie.
Mary Ellen,
Stevie, I'd be happy to draft both a survey of what worked well last year and also poll about whether people want to continue and what kind of issues.
Can I add one more thing about it? Because I actually attended a lot of them, right?
Yes.
And so I wonder if there could be just a paragraph associated in the poll, which is, this is what was actually accomplished or not, right? Because in that way, when you look at it, if you say, one of them was, what are leave behinds, right? Did we finish talking about that? Or do we still have more stuff to talk about, right? And then that way, at least, there's a level of information for the people that didn't attend to know if that might spark their interest.
Members of the working groups reported back to the committee, and we did not keep minutes or tape these meetings.
Well, I know they weren't taped, but
And we just, Stevie had notes, and Sharon had some notes too. We would provide this, but we were trying to make sure that the committee, these were the.
Can everyone hear Jean on the phone?
That we were trying to make sure that these were the committee's working groups. And so we asked for a volunteer each time to report back. And we would provide our notes if they wanted them. But we didn't really do it in terms of what was accomplished.
well, that would, because that helps answer the question if it's necessary,
Right.
right? If nobody's coming, then clearly, I mean, there could be a variety. Did you not attend because it wasn't a good time? Those kinds of
Right.
questions, right?
Yeah.
Because it was all on Zoom.
Right. Yeah, they were around lunchtime.
Yeah, we tried,
1:30,
we figured,
yeah.
I think they were like 1:30 to 3
Yeah.
on Fridays.
Yes.
Because we figured most people tried to have a lighter Friday than the rest of the week. But people also had emergencies.
Yeah, and we'll work on sending a poll out,
Okay.
and then we'll decide.
You have a comment from Cindy that it was difficult for her to add more meetings to her already business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be a big ditto there to himself. And like I said, and it's, we're asking more. Yeah. All right, hopefully, we'll get that out. Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that our ex officio member, Darla, has a new job.
Hey.
Would you like?
Oh, no, I have the same job, just for a new county executive. Yeah, I have the same, I'm doing the same thing except for county executive in Emirado. So, yeah,
And we're all delighted.
Glad you stayed.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
And Cindy Bond is voluntarily leaving Bellevue to reach for greener, easier pastures, I think. Cindy, I don't want to be speaking for you.
If not greener, then maybe certainly not require as much mowing, as it were.
Yeah, technically.
Cindy and I
started
talked
teaching-
about that yesterday. She'll be teaching. Tell us about that.
I am teaching a class for GISPIA, an intro to public service, and hoping to do some consulting for nonprofits and local government with a friend.
And Patty DeMarco has gone off the board in Forest Hills, but is not here because she is teaching. And I think she's just published another book. And so she's very busy, but not quite as crazed with being on the council. We've had a lot of changes in the municipalities. This is always the time and the year when we have a lot of changes. So you're going to be hearing from us to update the lists. Is there anybody else who's had major changes or improvements in their lives? Tim, how's your golf score?
Doing pretty good. I'm down to a 12.5 handicap, playing 3 times a week in Florida. Doesn't get any better.
Well, if I liked golf or Florida, I'd be right there.
Yeah.
Thanks, James.
Sure.
Any other new business that anyone wants to bring up?
I think this is, this is Dan DeMarco.
Hi, Dan.
Just a quick question. It dawned on me, when Darla just said she's working for Sarah. What are our terms? We were appointed by the executive, correct?
But there's terms.
So is it a term? I don't even.
Yes,
What-
it's a charge.
Take it away, Max.
Max is in charge.
Yes, we do have a spreadsheet where everybody falls, I believe. We set it up for holdover appointments, but it is 3-year terms commencing the first Monday in January. And well, maybe we didn't have holdovers expressly, but no, we do have a number of vacancies. Currently, I believe we're at 17 seated individuals, 21 total, 7 from each, or 3 from each of the 7 watersheds. So, yes, at some point we may have new nominations or appointments coming from the new county executive.
Right, and there are some folks that are expiring or that are, I think we did something last year or the year before, so we can accommodate like
Carryover, It was
carryover
like a
people. Yeah,
multi-year.
we did multi-year reappointments, so we could do that. So
I don't even know what my term is. So I was
It's
just
in the
curious.
spreadsheet somewhere.
Lifetime, Dan.
Uh-oh.
What's that?
I said it's lifetime.
A lifetime. Oh, okay. I feel like that with everything else in my life. Okay.
That's a great question, though. It really is, because I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering the same thing, or, you know, how many openings we have. Thanks for asking that.
Okay.
Any public comment?
No.
Nope. All right. Ask for a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion to adjourn.
Tim, I can always count on you for that.
I'm in.
Second.
Second, sorry.
yeah, I seconded it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
I tried to beat Tim.
Thank you all very much. And I know a lot of you went out of your way to be here when we made the call that we might not have a quorum, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Great job on the presentations tonight.
Yeah, I'd
Let
say
me
the
know.
same. Bye-bye.